Further questions? One over here.
To Nicholas and Philippa, you said that you made offerings at sites and you then received information. Now, assuming that you didn't actually get an email, did you have to go into some sort of medium-like trance to receive the information, or was it a different process?
It was a different process. It came through the computer, you might say, in terms of a particular set of... if we give you the example of Avebury, we felt drawn to look in a particular direction, and we were amazed to discover when we keyed in the particular dates and alignments that we were interested in, very prominent stars lining up with particular parts of the Avebury landscape. Some of this is still a bit confidential because we haven't yet published the full work on Avebury, but I can assure you that when it is published, you will be as struck as we were, and it really did feel very consuming, as though we were not being, if you like, permitted to let go of the work, but follow through with what turned out to be increasing revelations about the Avebury landscape. But I should say that having had the visions, and this was after we'd made offerings of red ochre and milk and honey at 2 sites in the Avebury landscape, the West Kennet Long Barrow and the Cove, these were offerings connected with shamanic journeyings we'd made a couple of days previously in Glastonbury. After this, we did find that fortuitously a whole range of quite academic tests had been made to establish the dates of the Avebury landscape, including, as I'm sure many of you will be aware, the end of a very extensive process of reconstruction and re-stabilising of the Silbury Hill structure. And that just felt incredibly fortuitous. So we also felt, rightly or wrongly, that the serendipity had worked at the level of time as well, because, we were able to check with what the archaeologists had come up with. And, okay, maybe carbon dating isn't perfect, but it was astonishing to us that we were able to confirm the dates we thought were important with the carbon dating that had literally just been completed.
Thank you.
Hi, can I just put a question jointly to John Michell and Hamish Miller? Thank you, by the way, for your books, City of Revelation and Sun and the Serpent. They've been like Bibles to me. Do you think it's significant that there's a pilgrimage coming up the Michael and Mary line right now that started on the 5th of May? That's the first question. And the second one is the rebuilding of the Glastonbury Abbey something that will simply happen by light, by our vision? Presumably not a bricks and mortar rebuilding, but that's the symbolic rebuilding. In our minds we see it, and that re-establishes divine order on earth when it's kind of done. That was my question. I hope it was a good one.
Who wants to start? John. Great. Okay.
About the last part of the question, the prophecy is, isn't it, that then will be what once has been, and Glasson's glory shall be seen. Wasn't that something channeled by Bly Bond? And it seems to be this prophecy that, just like in Jerusalem itself, that one day the temple will be rebuilt and then everything will be back in order again. Well, what exactly that means and what form it will take, we can't say. But it's to my mind, a very inspiring prophecy that one day we'll rediscover that secret which enabled the ancients to be so certain in building their great monuments to do with life and death or spirit, whatever it was. And we do live in times of revelation, and things like that are coming through. So it's a very inspiring time to live. But exactly what it will be, of course, no one can foresee. About the pilgrimages, I'll pass this on to Hamish.
Well, I was absolutely delighted to find they were doing that, and astonished actually that something like 30 people are going to spend 7 weeks walking up the Michael and Mary line. And I met them on the Tuesday evening of the second evening, and they were beginning to meld together into a group who were really on pilgrimage. They were all getting something different out of it, but they were all giving equally something back to the energy of the earth. And any pilgrimage of this kind with 30 consciousnesses together is hugely beneficial for the earth and will be actually a great, you'll be able to measure the difference when they come through Glastonbury. So I was deeply moved again by them. I keep being deeply moved by the things that are happening. But in fact, I'm just so delighted that they've got their backsides out of the cars, they're actually going, they're camping, they're on the line there, they're communicating with the line, they're directly communicating with the earth. And this is part of our problem. We don't take our shoes off and get our toes in the muck anymore. And they're just doing that, and I'm absolutely delighted.
Right. Thank you for your question. Anyone got any more questions? One here.
This is directed to any of you who wish to answer. I was wondering, with Hamish's talk, about what in fact we can do to reconnect with the earth and to raise the consciousness or to reconnect with it. I'm not even sure how to phrase my question, but I hope it's fairly self-explanatory. What can we do with the earth?
Was that to me?
Go ahead. I have another one. But any of you.
There's a certain amount of honesty. I mean, I can't say you must go out and get your hands dirty and down in the lawn at Glastonbury Abbey. What I'm looking for in this whole thing is a completely different relationship with the earth. And she supplies us with absolutely everything, and we're raping her at the moment. And she's so incredibly patient that there must come a time, if we don't change our conscious relationship with the earth, there must come a time when she loses patience. And I do think that perhaps that's why in the southern hemisphere she is enormously patient with us in the northern hemisphere. But I think she's being affected seriously by the number of people who are being killed. There are millions of people being killed, and the apathy and the distress that this is causing through the wars in the northern hemisphere. I think she says, okay, I'll quietly look after them, but the people in the southern hemisphere they have wars, but they're only 100 people. And there isn't the depth of apathy. There's still a rapport with the earth with southern hemisphere people that we haven't got. And we mustn't lose it. And the trouble is that most of us live in cities and we never actually see the earth. We don't see the sky. We don't see the phases of the moon. People come down to Cornwall from London and say, oh my God, what have you got in the sky here? And they're almost frightened of it. So it's a natural coming back to the old Druid rapport with the earth, if you like, an honest one.
Follow up from that, I just think, Hamish has been so inspiring in reminding us of what the fundamental values need to be. And I think all of us, anyone involved in Earth Mysteries knows that, the more you harmonise with the earth, the more the earth teaches you how to live on her. And it's to do with living humbly and simply. My own sense is that maybe we've become a bit too complicated in the way we live, and we expect too much. We're the most affluent society the world has ever seen, and there are lots of us. And of course, this issue of population, we want to stop war, but we do need to think about the growing population of the planet as well. Can the Earth provide for all of us? Some people say it would take 3 or 4 Earths to provide the standard of living for the future global population that we expect to enjoy. And I think of the Celestine prophecy. Some of you will remember one of the points in the Celestine prophecy is this vision of a much, much smaller population on planet Earth.
I was going to throw in another one from a slightly different perspective. I've been working a lot on a couple of sort of an area more in the political space, but there's a couple I would throw in. One is that the physics definition of power is the ability to do work. Most social definitions at the moment are the ability to avoid it. So it's something we can really start looking at. What do we mean by work? Well, there's a lot of things like spiritual work as well. The relationship, by spiritual I mean a sense of meaning and purpose, a sense of self and of relationship with that which is greater than self. Now that can be community, it can be the landscape, it can be anything else. The other one is going to be extremely uncomfortable for a lot of people, and that is we really need to get in our heads that there are no rights at all. All we have is responsibilities. That the idea of rights is simply a desirable outcome without any idea of how the hell we get there. What we need to look at much more are what are our responsibilities, and to really think in terms of what can I do. Otherwise, a whole culture has been based on the idea of right. Once we get that there isn't one, that there isn't any, then we start to move somewhere. That's where Hamish, I think, was being very useful about is what is our relationship? What are our responsibilities in terms of community, in terms of landscape, in terms simply of being?
Thank you.
I still think we have the right to live in peace.
Well, I think this ought to be...
We will try and do something about that.
I think that we ought to be drawing this a little more personally, because this is just all a little too global for me. I mean, I'm here because I'm trying to make a personal contribution. I think that what is important for every individual is to, above and beyond mere eating and taking a shower and getting our sleep, is to contribute something to the general welfare of everyone else. And to the degree that you make a contribution, it builds up your own self-esteem, your own self-worth, your value to other people. So, I think all of us here that are trying to research this problem of what these ancient monuments mean are trying to make a contribution, whatever we can, and we bring different disciplines and different experiences. So, because this is not a rigorously organized operation, but what we seek is community. We all are not operating alone, but in groups. And I belong to a number of different groups, and as we all do. And so this is one of them. By coming here, by paying, by joining a member to be with this group for the weekend, you've all become members of a group that's trying to understand what these monuments mean more seriously than the general public does. I mean, we're all trying to research this. Those of us that are trying to find answers are looking for feedback. Those of us that are making scientific contributions like we're trying to do are looking for arguments against us, because only the truth will only come out once the ideas there's a meeting, a confrontation of ideas and a sorting out of things. And hopefully that's one of the things that can come from a group like this.
Yeah, thanks. Great. Thanks very much. I think we're all members of a group, indeed, and that we are all megalithomaniacs here. Has anyone got any more questions on that? Perhaps, perhaps we can start ranging to more general things.
Well, I'd like to sort of follow that previous question by asking the panel what role sacred sites have in this process. Particularly, we've heard how sacred sites are in a state of ruin, and we don't have access physically to rebuild them. We don't even know how they should be rebuilt. What role do sacred sites have if we don't have the power to use them in the way that they ought to be used, and we don't have the knowledge?
I wonder if David would like to take the first stab at that one, beginning with Atlantis, possibly. How do we rebuild?
Well, what I would just say really quickly that's so important about sacred sites to me and is as just people worldwide get interested in sacred sites and traveling, going to other places, visiting these sacred sites. They're all over the world. It's a lot like the internet, where suddenly this people's ability to find information, research a sacred site in some remote country or right in their backyard, and then going, and I mean, it absolutely promotes understanding and better welfare for the whole planet in general.
I'll have a stab at this one also. Simple answer to you, or simple question rather. What to you is sacred? This is why common ground is useful, because they ask, what is particular? Where is the sense of what to you is sacred? One of the nice things about English law, for example, is that you can get a preservation order put on a tree where you and your wife first met, because it is sacred to you in that sense. So I think the idea of sacredness, one of the dangers that we've got of the whole idea of a sacred site, is this whole problem we have of loving places to death. I'd like to throw another nice little English pun to you, which is that if you take the word sacred and then swap the C and the A over, what you get is seriously scared. And one of the points here is how we look at the relationship that we have. There is a liminal space, I think Liz calls it, which is about, if we look at the whole point with a lot of the sacred spaces, we are on a border, an edge space. Now in ecologies, all the interesting things happen at the edges, on the shorelines, on the border between the forest and the meadows. So where for you is the edge? That's the place where the change will happen. Create your own space. For God's sake, don't go out to the bloody country. Take it into the city. Where is sacred in the city? That's the question I would ask to you.
Michael.
I find it extraordinary as the messenger sitting here, the deliverer of information and news. That I think I referred to them in my talk at the very beginning of the weekend as lumps of rocks in fields. And isn't it fascinating that something, Megalithomania, that's about lumps of rocks in fields, it turns into a philosophical argument, into a philosophical discussion. And it's the power of these things to get us to have a look at ourselves. Not so much to have a look at lumps of rocks, but to have a look at the humanity that's all around. That's the power for me. And that's what I hope that I've contributed, because Standing with Stones is for a larger audience, and if people can get to look at themselves through looking at rocks, then job done, and make available the discussion and the conversation that's been happening over this weekend.
Great. Thanks. Perhaps, John, would you like to add anything to that? What's the purpose of a sacred site?
No, I haven't really anything to add to that.
You haven't? No, okay. All right. I'm trying to draw you there. Okay.
I just noticed just one anecdote. At the very beginning of this, when I was interested in this subject, stone subjects weren't mentioned, but I once went to one, just out of curiosity, somewhere in Scotland, I think, and I was impressed to see that another couple of people were there too, and I wonder what they were doing there. I didn't know what I was doing there, but I did see there was an attraction, that was all.
Right. Great. Question at the back. Okay.
This is to anyone on the panel. Do you know much about the E8 mathematical theory and how that might relate to the Earth energy grid? This might be a bit of an obscure question. Sorry about that.
No one seems to. What is the E8 mathematical theory? Oh, okay.
I've only just been made aware of it a couple of days ago. It's if you look it up on the internet.
We will endeavour to find an E8 mathematical theory specialist for next year's conference then.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just that I've been if you Google it, sorry to use that word, but it's I can't even explain it actually at this moment. Maybe I'll have to come back next year and talk about it.
Great. We've just got some more questions at the back on that side.
I was just interested that you talk about it's just a lump of rock. Has anybody got any views on the crystal mass that are found in a lot of the standing stones?
The relevance of quartz in standing stones.
We used to make a terrible pun about it being a laser. But there is some, I mean, if we think of just basic electrostatics and the whole piezoelectric effects, there's some interesting stuff going on about all I would say is, yeah, gosh, what happens next is, well, actually, you're probably the best person to answer it. Next.
I think if you look at the good map of the geology of Britain, you'll just see the incredible riches that we are sitting on in terms of different kinds of stone formation. I mean, many people here will know the Ridgeway, the White Horses, you know, the manifestation of crop circles in the area where chalk is concentrated. And others of us will, I mean, many of us will feel this tremendous power of granite when we go down to Devon and Cornwall. For me, the different rock formations are really important, and different energies are manifested by the different stones. And I'm learning to kind of resonate a bit with the different vibrations. There's no doubt that granite is one of the most powerful resonators. And you know, anyone who's been in the King's Chamber and tried to produce sound from that incredible machine will know the power of granite at that level. I'm currently very interested in limestone, but you know, I think all of the stones speak in different ways.
I can just say these great limestone creatures that were behind me in the hospital bed seem to have all knowledge of from all time, if we only had the key to lock into them. And granite gives me the same feeling in Cornwall, that it's very structured with all the silicon bits in it. If you think how much information we can stick into a little telephone now, how much information could there be in one of these huge granite monoliths? And I just have the feeling that I'm overwhelmed sometimes, standing beside them, trying to communicate with them. And it's like, I feel like a sea slug. And they have got it all. So I think there are keys to human knowledge that are kind of come from the most extraordinary places. And one of the most likely places is from some of the megaliths.
Yes.
I'd like to ask the audience a question, if you don't mind. I think the organizers of this have done a terrific job, and I don't have a personal interest in this because I probably won't show up from Seattle next year, but I'd like to know whether, you know, you've sort of done this experience and, you know, you've heard all you want to hear about this for a while, or if this is done again next year with another group of people that they choose, how many of you would return for another session next year? Can you raise your hands?
Oh, that's great. Thanks very much. That's really...
That's what they want to know.
We
Thank
do
you.
try very hard not to have the same speakers back, in fact. We've done it like that 3 years running now, but we'll see what happens. Thanks very much. That was a useful straw poll. That was great, Jay. Thank you. Okay, we've got another question at the back.
Can I make a brief suggestion about what's sacred or what sacred means? To our Druid ancestors, who were, in my opinion, principally responsible for all the megalithic sites we've seen and go back in history as a philosophy more than a religion, their basic tenet was, and what is most sacred to them, was their free will. They said that without free will, there is no humanity. Free will was the essence of the soul. And so when you go to a sacred site, what you're attempting to do is to plug into our intelligent and responsive universe. And Hamish made this point and covered this point incredibly well, I think. Somebody else said there were three sorts of people. There are people who make things happen, there are people who watch things happen, and there are people who never knew what the hell happened. So if we want to make things happen, please can we all lobby for government for the people, and not this disastrous route we're traveling on, which is government of the people, which removes our free will and puts us in a situation where we are doomed to fail as a civilization, a world civilization, because of all the problems that Mother Earth will throw at us, or the universe will throw at us. We can't live with more than 3 billion people. And that's our big problem at the moment, particularly if we run into difficult times with cometary debris and other big catastrophes which have always wiped out civilizations in the past.
I saw you nodding sagely at that, John. Plato, I think, has something to say on government for the people. Is that not right? Or
at the beginning of the question, what is sacred mean? It means eternal, that which always is true. Like human nature is always true. Despite evolutionary theories, human nature is human nature, and that is, as you said, something which is sacred. And of course, all government should be for human nature, considering human nature. As to there being too many people, I don't believe that. Because they want to make colonies in space. My God, places, huge areas of the world are not inhabited, and they're far more hospitable than space. But of course, the population should be what can be looked after locally, rather than a great centralized economic system which can break down any time, you see, leaving people helpless. But sacred is eternal.
I'll throw in another one of my ghastly puns here. I'm much more noticing people talking about free will. What I'm mostly seeing is cheap won't. We really need to be looking really closely at what's going on. I know, sorry, that bad pun was so bad that no one even could cope with it. I'm always wary of a lot of the political stuff. I think most of it comes back to who are we? What is our relationship? Just one of the throwaway lines I came up with quite a while ago was that looking at Descartes and the whole idea of I think, therefore I am, for a lot of women particularly, it would be much closer to I relate, therefore I am. And therefore, what is our relationship with each other, with the space? There is no they, there is no government. There is only us, there is only I. What am I responsible for? And part of that is also the sacred. What is eternal? What is the sacred? Where are we? Where am I? What am I doing? What am I being? Otherwise, what we have is cheap won't.
Can I ask a question of follow-up? David, I was really intrigued by your talk last night, but at no point did you really kind of say what you thought about this culture. So I wonder if from all your great travels, how did the Atlanteans govern, do you think? I have no idea myself.
Okay. Right. I mean, I think what I would just say, I mean, if I had to somehow wrap up all that. But I think maybe one of the points I was trying to make was that just like today, there's a worldwide culture that's literally everywhere. There was in ancient times too, like that, and measurement and building styles and desires to create civilization or whatever it was. Yeah, it was a worldwide thing, and just like today, people travel all over the world, and they did it in ancient times too.
And was it centralized, or I just am intrigued. What have we got here?
Yeah, right.
Centralized,
I think that there were these centers, and
okay.
John and I were talking about that the other day, how all around the world were these navels of the world, the center of the world kind of place. And I mean, there's Cusco in Peru was called the navel of the world, the center of the world, Easter Island, they called it that. For the British Isles, apparently, it was the island of Man was the center. And I believe that, all over the world there were these mini centers. Some of them I believe, are underwater now.
Thanks. Great. John,
it seems to me, Paul, that having sort of studied ancient divinely based societies that is based upon the image of the universe, they're all over the world, but they're at different times. And the traditional explanation of that was that there's been revelations from the gods at different times of the truth, of true order, That is that what Socrates called that pattern in the heavens. And that's been instituted as an image for societies on Earth, based on the zodiac, largely, number 12 with the number 7. But these societies are instituted at different times. They've occurred throughout the whole of history, and they last a long time, and then they decline. Like everything, we humans always let things go downhill. So from the original revelation, there's a glorious golden age, like the days of King Solomon in the Holy Land. It's golden age, days of King Arthur, so all these legendary golden ages. And then, of course, it comes down and to dissolution, what's called the fall of Babylon, and then there's a new revelation somewhere else. But it's not all at one, I don't think. I think it's different times and different places.
Thanks. Another question. We're nearly at the end. One at the back, and then one on the right, and then maybe that's us for today, I think.
Hello. Hi, all. Just wondering, we're looking at all the stuff from the past. We haven't quite sussed out really how it all works properly. I've seen sort of some new stuff built, and there's energy going through it. If we're saying that, like what Hamish was saying, if everything responds to us and to thought and to our intent, and we have good intent, and we can build new things, which seems to come online, you can douse things in and after, it's a kind of two question really. Chicken and egg, what comes first? If everything's alive and you see nothing, and you build something, you go, well, look at that, there's a line. Oh, there's one of those as well. Chicken and egg. And the other one is, if these things of the old that we don't understand are tools that were used to do something, and I assume that the old bods before us experimented with all their pores to work out exactly how it's doing, what's stopping us now with good intent from creating new tools to carry out the same intent for the same beneficial purposes? And is anyone that you guys know doing it now, like sort of intentionally building things with intent? And what's the effects? And goodbye microphone.
Michael.
I don't know what I'm going to say. It's something along the lines of not crying for golden ages that have disappeared. We're in a golden age because we've got people here now, and we can take responsibility if we choose to build in that way, if we choose to leave our legacy in whatever form. Let it be for a better society, I guess. So let's not cry for wishing it was like another time, like a time gone past. Let's be with what we are, who we are, take responsibility right now. That's it's not quite answering your question, but I was given the microphone.
Yeah, I think things are getting better. That history is a struggle of ignorance versus learning and education and science. And what we've got, we're all using computers up here. We're all communicating with each other around the world. It's never happened before. My country, in America, women didn't even vote until recently. I mean, things are getting better in many, many ways, and things, we hear about on the news very small incidents of brutality in remote parts of the world where in relatively recent times, in Roman times and so on, violence was very, very common. And I think that if you, in a historical perspective, that we're much more civil as people than we used to be. We're much more sensitive. We're certainly able to do much more effective research than ever before, and we're making a lot more progress. And in an era with these computers and atomic energy and everything else, society is moving very quickly, and I think it has an opportunity to be something that we won't live to see, but it'll be. It has the potential of being much more interesting and fruitful than what we've had.
I think humans are doing really well with one another. Hamish has set us a new standard, if you like. I mean, he's right. The issue of peace is absolutely huge. But I do think that we haven't yet made peace with the earth. And I think we really need to take seriously the damage we've done to her. So in a sense, things have got better for us, but have they got better for our planet? And for me, at least, that's a huge pain and a huge concern. And when you talk about building things, I mean, all of us know people who are building stone circles, and I think that's fantastic. But building homes for ourselves with wood and stone and cob and straw bale, that seems to me important too. Because in that way, we're connecting back to the earth and living more simply in the way that I believe she wants us to live.
Thanks. Okay, I think we are nearly out. I'm so sorry, I think we've gone over. That's it. Thank you very much to our esteemed panelists, and a warm round of applause for them, please. And, great. And